Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Super Feeler podcast. My name is Lori, and I'm very excited today to be joined by Kat and Charles for another installment of our BPD Relationships mini-series. For those of you who are new to the podcast, welcome. I'm so happy to have you. Just so you know what's kind of going on here on this BPD relationship series is back in December, we started doing every 2 weeks a BPD relationship highlight. And so this was really to try and challenge the narrative that is very commonly seen online around what being in a relationship with someone with borderline personality disorder is like, and really showcasing that, healthy love exists and that we can have it. And it's not something that we need to be afraid of. And it's also something that, we can learn from others around how that works for them. So we've done probably like 8 or 9 episodes of the BPD relationship series. Then we took a little bit of a pause for the BPD family series. And now we're going to have some BPD relationships kind of coming throughout the rest of the year because they're some of the most popular episodes. So that is announcement 1. That's why you're here. This is what you're listening to. Announcement 2, just wanting to thank a couple Patreon members that have joined since our last episode. So Michael, officially the first person from Norway on Patreon, welcome. Presley and Inga, thank you so much for all your support. I want to note, especially because Kat's also on a podcast, I'm going to note just for everybody listening to podcasts that if you are subscribing to Patreon, please don't give Apple extra money. Kat, I don't know if you guys talk about this on the BPD Bunch ever, but Apple has rigged it so that they want people to not subscribe to Patreon. So they add extra fees if you subscribe through the app on your iPhone. So if you are subscribing to Patreon and you are on anybody's Patreon, I don't care whose it is, this is just a PSA for everyone. Don't do it through your app on your phone, do it through your browser, and don't use Apple Pay. It's ridiculous. It's so stupid, but if you do it on your computer, it's fine. Otherwise, you'll get charged, I think it's 30% extra or something completely ridiculous, and they don't need our money. Okay, with that little rant about Apple, welcome Kat and Charles. I'm so happy to have you. We've heard, Kat, your story a little bit already. So your episode came out end of May. But maybe do you want to give people a 30-second or maybe a 2-minute recap of your story and how it's unique in case they haven't listened to your first episode?
Yeah, sure. So I have a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, classed really now as being in remission. But my current diagnosis is schizotypal personality disorder, which is a cluster A personality disorder. So it's part of the odd and eccentric cluster of disorders. So that's kind of my main issue, I guess, at the moment. But I do still obviously struggle with traits of borderline personality disorder. There are definitely situations and triggers which bring that up for me. So I wouldn't say that it's kind of out of the picture completely. It's definitely something that still raises its head from time to time. But yeah, in terms of issues that I face day to day, it's very heavily influenced by STPD with a little bit of BPD thrown in.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And yeah, I'll link obviously the show that Kat was on previously so that you can listen to her story. And she's also on the BPD Bunch podcast, so you can hear all about her story on that show too. Out of curiosity, before we get to you, Charles, a lot of the kind of theme of this series, obviously it's a BPD relationship series, has been specific to BPD showing up in relationships. And so we'll get into that in detail throughout the episode. But do you find the schizotypal personality disorder impacts your relationships much?
I guess for me, if I can just kind of go first, obviously, Charles, you can add to this. I feel like for
Mm-hmm.
me, the biggest issues are the paranoia and the anxiety, because those are the things that I find to be really quite life limiting. I would
Mm-hmm.
say, and again, Charles, you are more than welcome to agree or disagree with this. The biggest problem that I have is the social isolation, which kind of makes me want to hide away and not socialize, and I really struggle in crowded environments and things like that. So I mean, obviously I would never stop Charles from going out and doing what he wants to do, but I think there are definitely instances where, because I don't accompany him to events or I don't participate in things because I would rather be at home because that's, my comfort zone, I think he finds that really difficult to deal with. So I would say, I think with STPD, that's probably the primary thing. There are other things as well, but I would say that's probably the biggest hurdle that we face.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. Charles, does that resonate with you?
But yeah, I'd agree with that. I think to some degree it can limit the extent to which that sometimes we can make memories together in a way that I would like to. if it involves things that are maybe slightly impulsive, or there's an element of unpredictability to them, or and sort of outgoing social aspect to it. It can be something that doesn't really, it wouldn't really be something that both of us would both find fulfilling.
Yeah, I that can be tough, right? Like I know I don't struggle with STPD, but I struggle with just like social anxiety, and I find it really hard to get to some social stuff sometimes. And I know like I'm sure my husband would be thrilled if I was more willing to like socialize with new people, but I just really like my comfort zone. Um, and Charles, maybe I'll start with you. How did you guys meet? What drew you to each other?
So we were both on the same teacher training course. We both did teacher training at the same time, and we sort of met, yeah, in different seminars and workshops and things like that attached to the training. Um, yeah, I think we just got paired together, or we just sort of gravitated towards each other. I think all the trainee teachers who were maybe slightly odd or slightly different in some way sort of gravitated towards each other, and Kay and I were both part of that circle, I think. And yeah, we both started, yeah, sitting together more often in the training sessions, sort of messing about. It sort of felt like we were back at school, and we'd be, you know, doing drawings and passing notes and things like that when we were meant to be engaging in a bit
That's
more,
so cute.
mature teacher training and stuff like that. So like in the teacher training, we were like the naughty kids, distracted and just yeah, messing about.
They're like, these are the kids that you need to pay attention to in your class because these are the hard ones.
Yeah, we were so poorly behaved in that training, like all through the year.
That's amazing. And so when was that? Like, what year was that?
That was 2018. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, 2018. So yeah, we've been together about 8 years now. Actually, I think it was about this time 8 years ago. We we met, or was it 2017?
It
I get
was
mixed up with the
2018. Yeah, so basically, like you kind of have an induction week. So in the summer before you start in the September, you're put together for a week and you kind of get to know everybody else that's on your cohort. I was
Mm,
very intrigued by Charles, to say the least. Um, I mean, he was ginger, so he was, well, still is a redhead, and I've always kind of been drawn to men with red hair, so that was definitely, a big tick for me. But when I got to know him, I just thought he was so funny, and I think that that's always been something that has carried us through the relationship. Just the fact that, well, probably me more so finding him funny than him finding me funny, but we have always had like that thread of humour that's run through the relationship, and I think that was definitely something that really attracted me to Charles in the beginning because there is a little bit of an age gap between us, so I am older, and I think if we'd have matched on a dating app or something, I probably would have been a bit like, oh, I don't know about this. But I think that's the advantage
yeah.
of having somebody that you meet in person because straight away we had really good chemistry and it was just so easy to be with Charles. Like it was so fun. Like there was no game playing or any of that kind of stuff. Like straight away, I just knew exactly where I stood with him. And I think that, when you've got BPD, that's amazing. Like somebody who is just so consistent and
Yes.
shows up for you all the time, it's like an absolute godsend.
You didn't, you didn't have a BPD diagnosis at the time, right?
No, so that came in 2021. So this is a couple of years
That's what
before.
I thought. Yeah.
But I definitely had a few issues on that training year, which kind of it flagged up to me that there was probably some kind of ongoing issue,
Mm.
but the diagnosis did not come until 3 years later.
Yeah, I thought that was right. I was like, was it 2021 or 2022? And then I'm also like, I talk to hundreds of people with BPD all the time. I have no idea if I get these timelines confused. So okay, so when you said there was some stuff that flared up during that year, like, do you mind like sharing a little bit about what that looked like?
No, no, that's fine. I actually, and I will word this very delicately, I was supporting somebody at the time who was going through a process of reporting sexual assault. I think I sort of overestimated my ability to be able to cope with it based on my previous experiences. And I sort of found that I got really overwhelmed with that because obviously, if you don't deal with something, it just comes up again further down the line for you. So that was definitely something that I really struggled with that year. Unfortunately, Charles was aware of that situation. And I mean, this happened right at the very start of our relationship, like literally a couple of weeks in. I think there was always the option for Charles to walk away and say, actually, I'm not dealing with this, like, this is too much hassle. But he didn't. And I feel like us having that challenge at the start of our relationship, it kind of made us have a much stronger foundation for the future. So that was a positive, but it very easily could not have been.
Yeah. But that's like you need that yeah, that challenge to be like, this is what it's gonna be like.
Yeah.
So can we work through this? Charles, what was that like for you? Was it distressing or were you pretty solid through the whole thing?
It was distressing. I do find some mood-related symptoms of BPD, like related to low mood and things like that. It can be quite distressing for me because I have a mindset of wanting to fix everything immediately, and when I can't do that, then it's I find that quite upsetting and frustrating. And when I don't exactly know, I wasn't exactly aware of everything that Kat was feeling, and it became quite confusing and frustrating in some ways, and upsetting that I wasn't able to sort of provide an answer or provide a solution to and make things better basically. So that's something that has um, that's something that I've struggled with myself over the years, and less so now, because sometimes I've learned that I just need to let go a little bit and not try and rush to try and solve you know solve issues that aren't necessarily ready to be solved, or don't necessarily need to be solved, or are totally beyond me to sort of provide a solution for.
That's so
So
hard though, because you see your like the person you love in pain or distress, and you're just like, I want to fix everything because I want your life to be like perfect, right? It's really hard to do that.
So I think like one of the biggest difficulties that we have as a couple is for me, like when I'm in a really heightened emotional state, I blow up. I'm not a shouter and screamer, but I love to vent. And I will go to Charles as my person and just like vent and moan and whinge and just kind of get it all out there. And I think now Charles has understood that actually when I'm doing that, I'm not necessarily wanting him to come in and fix it. It's just I need
Mm-hmm.
to get that out and it's a release. So he's now more kind of understanding of when I am doing that, that actually he just needs to listen. And once I've got it all out, I've essentially forgotten about it and moved on after 10 minutes.
Totally.
whereas for Charles, like I think he finds that a lot harder to understand. He's like, how on earth do you go from like blowing up over something to 10 minutes later being completely fine?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes when you're venting in quite a slightly animated way, like it can be quite it can feel quite blindsiding, and then you sort of will leave the room, and I'll feel like I'm left in the wake of the your sort of venting, and it'll sort of like
Mm-hmm.
I'll be sort of despairing a little bit and just thinking, wow, what just happened? And you know, an hour or so later, Kay's forgotten about it, and I'm sort of still feeling the aftermath of it, and so it can be quite a difficult gear change for me to then catch up with that, and yeah, sort of recover from that. But yeah, and then I think I'll be quite upset off the back of that sometimes, and then later on Kay will just be like, oh, what's the matter with you? Because Kay's sort of like in her head she's sort of moved on from it.
Yeah, I think that's really hard for partners because like if they were I know my husband has the same like kind of challenge where like if he was that upset about something which he probably A, would never be that upset about something, like just because that's not his nature. And then B, if he was, it would be like something that he would be like distressed so hard about that it would last for like a year or whatever. And then I'm just like, Brah! And then I'm good. And then I'm like, okay, cool. So what are we gonna have for dinner? And it's like a very like strange foreign concept for people.
Yeah, definitely. It's yeah, I don't know what Kay thinks, but I think that was something that we had discussions about in the past with Kay. Didn't realise, the effect it would have on me sometimes when things would be like that, and she'd be really upset, and I'd be sort of sad because she was upset, and then like she
Mm-hmm.
would have just sort of forgotten about it later. Yeah.
I think that's the thing, because he is the closest person to me. I sort of dump, I guess, is the right word. And, when we are talking about these kind of situations where I am venting about things, it's not aimed at him. It's just, it could be things like work, it could be something that a friend's done, that kind of thing. But I didn't realize that because it's not aimed at him specifically, that he still takes the emotional load from that. I just assume you're not the target, so why would you be upset? Which is a very oversimplistic way of looking at things. So it did take a few conversations with him to be like, actually, it's kind of about your whole demeanor and your energy and sort of the way that you put yourself across, and that's what's having the effect, rather than it being specifically aimed at me over something that I've done. And I think like maybe that's just like a bit of a lack of empathy on my part, but I do understand it
Mm,
now.
interesting. Yeah, I mean it's hard to empathize when like we just like it's such a foreign way of feeling.
Yeah.
Like our way is so different than like what a kind of neurotypical way looks like. So, out of curiosity, Charles, the like kind of you call them illusions, right, Kat?
Like the disturbances, the perceptual ones.
Okay. Yeah. So the those like perception disturbances and like paranoia and stuff that comes with the STPD. Charles, what's that like for you?
It's a strange one that it can be. Yeah, I try and not make too much like excessive noise in the house because then Kay like Kat might think like, oh, what's that? Am I actually hearing that? Am I not hearing that? So I'll try and limit the amount of me like
Mm,
talking to myself because Kat then could be like, hey, someone's talking to me, someone's talking to me, and then or like tapping my foot and things like that. I'll try and limit that a little bit if I can. But yeah, I think awareness and identification of what you know, um, sort of sensory illusions can sort of look like sometimes. Now it's got to a stage where Kat might ask me, "You see that over there? Can you see that?" And I'll say yes or no. And I go, "Oh, okay then." Or can you hear that? And I'll say yes or no. Or it quite often is something that um, we can both hear, but that Kat might misinterpret as something else. Like we live quite near a train line, and it's we can hear the screech of the brakes on the train wheels sometimes, and then Kat might say, "You hear screaming," and I'll say, "Oh, that's the
mm.
sound of the train wheels," things like that. I suppose it's something it's difficult for me to have too much of an understanding of because I suppose there's probably a lot of cases where Kat's experiencing something like that, but doesn't tell me or doesn't, just keeps it to herself. Um,
Because it's just part of your like everyday, right? So you don't feel the need to express it. Is that why?
if I don't know, Kat, if how frequently you experience things like that, but they may not all be things that you consider worth telling me about. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think like a lot of the time, because I do have that ability most of the time to be able to rationalize these things, Like for Charles, it's more a case of like confirming reality. So, for example, like we live near a nature reserve. So I don't know if you've ever heard a fox call at night, but it literally sounds like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
screaming.
yeah,
So like it might be like,
yeah.
oh, can you hear that? And it'll be yes or no. And then if it's yes, it's like, oh, okay, that's fine, and we move on. But there
Hmm.
have been like instances like in the past where it's been, I'm going to say annoying. So I think like the one that springs to mind is recently I was walking home and it was winter, so it was dark quite early. And like I said, we live near a nature reserve, so you get all kinds of wildlife that sort of wander onto our housing estate. And I saw a shadow of what I thought was a monster. And I know that that sounds really embarrassing,
Hmm.
but like genuinely, I could see this
No.
shadow, and I was like, well, I can see a monster, so I suppose I better call Charles and tell him. So I
Yeah,
phoned him.
just in case. Yeah.
So I phoned him, and while I was on the phone saying that I could see this monster with like horns on its head, a massive deer ran out in front of me. So clearly it wasn't a monster, it was just a stag, and what I was
Yeah.
seeing was, like the shadow of the deer. And then it was like running around on our estate because I screamed and it frightened it. So then it was running around everywhere, and I was like, oh my God. So like we do have really funny stories about it as well. Um, but I think
Yeah.
like in many ways, like some of it's just become a little bit of a joke, but you do have times where it's really annoying and inconvenient. Like, you know, it's not uncommon for me to wake up in the early hours of the morning and smell burning, and then I'm running around the house because I haven't realised whether
Right.
it's an olfactory hallucination or whether the house actually is on fire. And then, like when you're waking your partner up at 4 o'clock in the morning, like, is the house on
Yeah. The
fire? And
house is
he's
on
like, oh
fire.
my
Yeah.
God, like leave me alone, I'm trying to sleep. So yeah, that can be pretty annoying.
That's fair. And what would be, I feel like it must be pretty comforting to have that second opinion though, right? To be like, is that is the house on fire? And then be able to have him wake up and smell it and be like, no, you're good. Go back to sleep. I remember like, well, it reminds me of two things. One is I remember seeing this video of like a service dog for somebody with schizophrenia. I don't know if you've seen this video, but they had trained the service dog to greet people that come into the room because the person with schizophrenia like obviously was not obviously but in their experience was seeing people that weren't there, and so if the dog didn't greet the person then he knew it was a hallucination. And I was like, oh, that's so brilliant because it's like a secondary like quote unquote person to be able to do that. And then the other example that I think of is like, for me, I find it so helpful to have my husband around when I'm in social interactions because oftentimes my like paranoia or like overreading of the room will make me feel like I've either done something wrong or like maybe I've misinterpreted a signal. And he's able to be like, no, that person was like really out of line, as opposed to me like blaming myself for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely relate to that with BPD as well. Like I do rely on Charles
Mm-hmm.
quite a lot as like the normal one to help me out with
Yes,
assessing
exactly.
situations.
Yeah, because we just don't like, we're really good at reading people, but sometimes because of that we overread people, right? And
Yeah.
then you're like, yeah, then the paranoia. Anyways, there's so many things. So, Kat, you're pretty open about your BPD, but I don't know if you're open about it in your like personal life.
I am pretty open about it, sort of at work and in my personal life as well. It's just
Okay.
a personal decision really that I made purely on the basis that I just thought if I was open about it, not only would it help other people, but also it stops it really from being used against me, especially in a professional context.
Yeah, you're kind of taking the power back, right?
Yeah.
So, Charles, have you ever had anybody say anything like hurtful around like, oh, you shouldn't marry somebody with BPD? Or I guess you guys were already together at the time, but any like stigma that you've experienced because you're with someone with BPD?
Um, I haven't. I've mainly because Kat's quite open about it. I try and be fairly open about it as well, because I think that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing and having those conversations is the best way to sort of raise awareness and things like that. So I'd like to be, fairly honest about things like that. I think a lot of people have very little understanding of um, BPD in general. Like 99% of the time, they they think you're referring to bipolar disorder, and then they'll talk about like, oh, I
Yeah.
had a relative with bipolar disorder, and it's like, no, it's different. It's like, yeah. Um, but yeah. One thing I have found from speaking quite openly about it, and is that people have spoken to me about their partners or relatives, and some of their sort of behaviors or traits or sort of patterns that I can sort of recognize as potentially being symptomatic of something like BPD, and sort of being able to give a little bit of advice on what I would think might work in a situation, or where I think that their partner could be coming from. So yeah, I do tend to try and be quite open about it. I've had very few people. I don't think I've had any people actually sort of express a great degree of negativity around BPD in front of me. Mainly that's because I set my stall out quite early.
Hmm.
If the conversation turns towards BPD, I'll sort of like try and advocate a little bit, I suppose. I think I have had people say things like, "Oh yeah, my previous partner had BPD," and things like in a just sort of like a negative way, as if everybody's meant to understand and go like, "Oh God, that's terrible," that must have been terrible for you,
Yeah.
and I sort of say, "Oh yeah, my wife's got that, yeah," and yeah, carry on. What were we going to say?
I appreciate that so much on behalf of all of us. Thank you for fighting the good fight with us. Because, yeah, the whole like, oh, my ex girlfriend had BPD is like such a classic thing for people to say, as though it's like the worst thing that could have possibly happened to you. And that's not true.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll just go. Actually, she's got a book about it if you'd like to read it.
Yeah, yeah. For the low price of $20, you can read all about it. No.
What I will say though,
I
if
love
I
it.
can, if I can just sort of add to that, is
Oh
obviously
yeah.
because I wasn't diagnosed until 2021 and we've been together since
Yeah.
2018. I think for a lot of people, it just wasn't even a conversation until I had that diagnosis, and by which point people had got to know me well enough by that point for it to not be an issue anyway. And I think it sort of goes hand in hand with that slightly more discouraged expression of BPD, because I think if anything, the most common reaction that both of us have had has been like shock, essentially, as in like,
Yes.
I can't believe you've got
You
that.
can't possibly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think, there's definitely that argument as well, which has helped us swerve some of those more difficult conversations. In fact, I feel like people have probably been more comfortable being rude to me about it than they have to Charles.
Hmm. Interesting. Can you elaborate on that? I'm so curious.
Yeah, sure. So there is actually an example that I've put in the book, but I will sort of elaborate on it a little bit here. So it was actually when I was temping at a school, and I was teaching a class, and earlier in the day I'd asked for some time off to go to a psychiatric appointment. So obviously I'd had to take the letter and everything to them. So all the details are in the letter. Um, a member of leadership actually came into the classroom and said, "Can you step outside the classroom for 10 minutes?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." Went outside, left, came back, and as I was coming back in, I heard them say to the students that were in there, "If you ever feel really unsafe in the classroom, you know where we are." And I was like, okay, that's really
Wow.
weird. And then one of the students said to me after they left, "That was really weird. Like, they kept asking if we felt safe with you in the classroom, like telling us where to go if we need support." Like, I was like, that's so weird. And I just thought, oh, maybe it was
Mm-hmm.
like a health and safety thing. But then when I got home after work on the evening, it just didn't sit right with me. And I thought, like, is this some kind of stigma, like discrimination? I don't know. But luckily, I did go back in the next morning and report it to my manager, and they did take it really seriously. But
Good.
yeah, there's been like a couple of instances of, things like that, and just like really uneducated comments as well, but I think people feel a lot more comfortable saying it to the person with BPD than the person who's in the relationship with them.
Yeah, fair. It's interesting. First of all, I'm so sorry that that happened to you. That's awful. And like, yeah, I'm sure that was discrimination. Like 100% sure.
Yeah.
It's not a fluke. And that's awful. Wow, that's such a like good example of stigma in the like real life. Yeah, I mean it's funny when I put like I don't usually like write questions before interviews, but I some partners really wanted to have some. So when I first was like brainstorming this series, I had that question in there because I know there is a lot of like there, in some people's lives there is a lot of like, oh, don't date her, she has BPD. And like I've even heard that from like other people saying like, oh, I went on a date. This happened to me literally weeks ago. I can't remember who it was, but somebody said to me, oh, I went on a date with someone and they obviously had BPD, so obviously I didn't go out with them again. And it was like a friend of mine, and I was like, okay, but like what? I'm confused about the how you think that that is like an okay statement without any explanation. And they were like, yeah, because I really thought like I should show them your peer support group, and like I thought about it after, but now it feels weird to like reach out to them. And I was like, okay, but we can't pass the fact that you just like made a very like judgmental discussion about this person. Like that's a horrible. But yeah, I guess people just like don't, I guess, think sometimes before they speak. And maybe because I think you're right, like because they knew you two as a unit for what, 4 years before you got diagnosed, 3 years before you got diagnosed, like there was less room for that judgment because they could already see that you have like this good relationship. Another question that I have is like, what does your relationship look like day to day? I gather you love each other very much and you have a healthy relationship. Can you describe what a healthy relationship looks like for you?
Yeah, so I'll go first. I'll just sort of summarize. So, we actually don't really argue. I know that's like such a cheesy thing to say. Like, we might have the odd disagreement, but as far as I'm aware, we've never
Mm-hmm.
actually had like a full-on like shouting, screaming argument. Like we are pretty good at communicating, I think. Like we are very open with each other. It's always very respectful dialogue. The sense of humour is again there all the time. Like sometimes there are things that we really should take a lot more seriously than we do. And, like I think humour diffuses a lot of tense situations as well. Like I've spoken about this before, like I think it could go either way with someone with BPD. If you are venting or upset about something, like Charles will make a joke and like that's it. Like it will just take the wind out of my sails and I'll just start laughing and like everything's fine. But I think it can quite easily go the other way as well if you misjudge it. But I think like day to day, like it's pretty plain sailing.
Yeah, generally, yeah, we don't really argue very much. Sometimes, we can have, yeah, disagreements about things. If sort of, things start to get a little bit heightened or animated, I tend to just sort of remove myself
Mm-hmm.
from the discussion. Then we maybe just revisit it later. Um, but yeah, there's not really, we don't. There's no shouting or anything like that, or sort of anything personal. We don't really, make any personal digs or anything like that because I don't think there's anything really so dramatic in our lives that it would ever warrant that kind of level of emotion. Really, like we're yeah, everything's pretty stable. Really, I think yeah, we're quite busy people. We both tend to work quite late and come home and sort of like I tend to cook the dinner, Kale eat the dinner, and
A boring
obviously
adult
don't
life,
have to
do
have a
chores, go to bed early.
yeah, yeah. We try and like on the weekends it can be like we have quite different interests. I think I
Mm.
recently took up sailing and I like
Wow,
hiking
cool.
and I like camping and things like that. And something anything that involves the tiniest little bit of mild peril in the background that something could go wrong is always something I'm slightly interested in. Um, Kay, he's really into fitness and things like that. We do go to like the same fitness class here and there. So I've actually, I've been going to Kay's sort of fitness class that Kay's been going to for about a year now. I've just started
Mm,
going a few weeks ago, and it's been really enjoyable to sort of spend time with each other in that way. Because it's like sort of set aside time that we're gonna if we go every week, then it's like sort of quality time that's already in the calendar. It's not quality time that we have to try and set aside time for and try and make a plan for. It's like, we get to spend time away from the house, away from the chores. We're not looking at, the layer of dust on the top of the TV when we're sat down on the sofa. We're not in the atmosphere and of the house, we've not both just sat there in the living room with the broken dishwasher in the back of our minds, and we're out of that
truly.
situation. We're actually spending some nice time with each other, which is great. But yeah, I think Kay can get quite worried about me if I go away to places, if I camp somewhere, stop over somewhere, or go sailing or go hiking or something like that. I think she can worry about me sometimes. But yeah, what would you say?
Yeah.
Kat?
Yeah, I think like I was hoping that you would bring this up actually, because I think this is still a challenge for me in terms of I would say fear of abandonment, but I don't really know if it is technically abandonment. It's more kind of the fact that people with BPD obviously struggle quite a lot with object permanence, and if someone or something is not directly in front of us, it's like they don't exist. I think with that, it's like I've always worried when Charles has gone away, not because of cheating or anything like that, because I know with all my heart that he would not do that. But it's more kind of like, especially with him being on a boat in the middle of nowhere, it's like, what if he's dead? And I know that that
Yeah,
sounds
I
really
know. I
silly.
fear that every day. Yeah. No, it doesn't. I feel that every like even sometimes if like my husband's downstairs and he's just quiet for a long time, I'm like, "Oh my god, he's had a heart attack and died." Like, no, he's 32. Like, I'm sure he's okay, knock on wood, but here I am paranoid now because I'm terrified he's just going to die. That's not weird, Kat. I feel you.
I think
Yeah,
that's the
I don't,
thing,
I don't
but
think it helps.
also
Sorry.
like I think sorry Charles, no, it's all right. I was just gonna say like I think actually like the nature of your hobby really helps because I think previously like when he's been away, I've been really tempted to like keep checking in, which is annoying for him because Charles is the kind of guy who is nice, like he's a decent man. So if I'm texting him checking in, like he feels obligated to respond because that's how he is.
Right.
Whereas when he's on a boat in the ocean, there's no signal. So I can't physically get in touch with him to keep checking in. So we sort of have a system now where I know roughly when he's going to be out sailing and what time he'll be back on shore. So therefore what time he'll be in contact with me. So I think that's struck a really nice balance between my need for contact but his need for time away from the relationship. So I think that's actually worked out quite well for us because I think at the start of the relationship that was probably more of an issue when I didn't really know Charles. And although he's always been really straight with me and really consistent, there's always just that need to check in, I suppose.
Is that resonating with you, Charles?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, if I was say on a weekend away with friends or something like that, then I might get like quite a lot of texts like things like the washing machine's broken, the back door's not locking, something, it'd be like a list of things that are going wrong, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't fix any of this. I'm away. I can't do anything about these things. Like, can you just please
Right.
just wait till I get back? But it's like I've sort of recognised that as just wanting to make contact now. It's not necessarily like,
They weren't even
you've got to
broken.
come home and fix this sort of thing. And it's yeah, it's it's we sort of experiment with different things. I think to sort of once Kat to avoid messaging me too much while I was away once, she blocks my number so that she would
Mm,
message me, and I
that is a
was
very BPD thing to do.
I was absolutely losing my head because I was like, oh my God, she hates me. I've done something really bad. What is
Yeah.
it? What have I done? And you know, and I got in touch with her later on in the evening. And she's like, Oh yeah. I just blocked your number because I thought you'd want to spend time with your friends, and I didn't want to be texting you all the time. I was like, why didn't you tell me that? But
Yeah,
Yeah,
the moral of the story is like obviously tell them why you're
communicate.
blocking them before you do it.
Yeah, totally.
yeah, I don't think it helps when I come back from like sailing sometimes, and I'm like really like fired up and enthusiastic about it. And I was like, oh, it was amazing. We almost died. I don't think that probably
Right.
helps too.
You could skip that part.
Yeah.
And do you ever worry or have issues, Kat, with like losing your own identity in the relationship? Or is it helpful because you have such unique hobbies?
Yeah, I think it's really helped. Like, this has been such a huge problem in previous relationships where I did not have a concrete sense of self. So, I mean, I've spoken about this on the BPD Bunch, but my previous partners have all been very, very different to Charles in the sense that I have always gone for people who are the opposite to me. So it was usually people with a lot of charisma, like very extroverted, and probably quite
Mm,
domineering, I would say, in personality. And I think that wasn't necessarily that I was attracted to them on that basis. It was that they had the qualities that I felt that I lacked. So I would
right.
go for people that were typically quite avoidant, like very big personalities. And then it obviously wouldn't work out because of incompatibility. But with Charles, I think because I had that opportunity to get to know him before we started dating, like really get to know him, I think that helped a lot because he doesn't impress anything on me. There's no real expectations of what he wants me to be like. He's very accepting, he's very flexible. So, it took me a long time to cultivate my own identity. And a lot of that has
Hmm.
encompassed things like, aside from having my morals and values, like then exploring things like hobbies that were a part of my identity. So he's already mentioned that I do a lot of fitness and he has worked his schedule so that I'm able to do that. So I think having that support and that leeway has been invaluable, really. And he's very supportive in terms of identity. So it's nice to have that safe space to be able to explore identity with my partner.
Totally. And not having to just like like chameleon into who they are because sometimes that's how we find our self identity in relationship and it's not helpful.
Exactly. And I think, the fact that he is really into sailing and I have expressed no interest in sailing is actually like a
Yes,
really big positive for
truly.
me because with previous partners,
Yeah.
I've like, you love football, so do I. You like World War I,
Yeah,
so do I.
100%. Yes. No, for sure. The amount of people that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm totally into snowboarding. I've never snowboarded in my life, like whatever. But yeah, my husband's like obsessed with Dungeons and Dragons. And like, I know that I'm solid in my relationship when I'm like, I literally could not be paid to do Dungeons and Dragons. Like, I
Same,
have
same.
no interest at all. Which is actually funny, Kat, because I feel like you might love it because you have such like a vivid imagination, whereas I just have no imagination at all. I
It's
could not
really
be paid to
funny
do
that
it.
you've mentioned that because Charles actually loves D&D and he's been trying to get me into it for ages and I've been resisting.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I feel we're on the same page. I literally have no interest. And do you ever split on Charles, Kat?
Um, no, I mean we have our disagreements for sure, but not actual splitting. I think, I've never really had strong favorite person relationships anyway. And I think that's
Mm,
probably down to the STPD because I just don't have that emotional
right.
bandwidth. So, I might like idealize somebody but not love them. But then when I split on them, it's just like apathy
Hmm.
and disinterest rather than hating them. So the extremes are actually quite narrow for me. I never have split on Charles, but I think that even if I was prone to a split, I feel like he would be quite confident in how to handle that because he knows what I need. I do need space. If we have a disagreement, we'll just take ourselves off to separate ends of the house because we've got separate areas that are kind of just ours. So he'll go into the garage, I'll go
Nice.
into my reading corner, And, like most of the time we'll come together and discuss it later, but sometimes it's so insignificant that we don't even really need to bring it up. So we are
Yeah.
able to give each other what we need, I guess. So it comes down to, boundaries and communication again.
Mm-hmm. Which has been the theme of every single one of these BPD relationships episodes is like communication 100% of the time. Yeah, for sure. And space, right? I love like I think I don't know about you, but in previous relationships like space scared the shit out of me. And what now that I'm in a healthy relationship, it doesn't. Like I'm happy to have my own space and I'm happy for him to have his own space, which I feel like makes the world of difference. Sounds like you guys are the same.
Yeah, I just feel like I said before, like I never have to really worry about what he's doing. Like there's just that
Yeah.
element of complete trust really with Charles. Like I could probably go on a world cruise for 6 weeks and I would come home very confident that, nothing would have happened while I've been away.
Yeah, totally. He's just been sailing and almost dying every 3 days or whatever, but other than that, you're good.
He's probably sailing the cruise ship by then.
Yeah, true. The ultimate sailing. Well, is there anything relationship wise that we haven't talked about that you guys really wanted to talk about today?
I think I would say, and again, Charles, I don't know whether you would agree with me, that probably one of the biggest challenges in our relationship is impulsivity on my side.
Mm,
So I think that's probably the thing that we find the most difficult to handle together. Like, I think in most relationships, from what I understand, people combine finances and things like that, which is something that we've never thought was an appropriate thing to do because
me neither.
I don't have the greatest track record with finances. So, again, it's those open conversations and things like that. Like, there have been times in the relationship where I've been in like a bit of a financial mess, like nothing that's devastating or going to have really serious consequences, but I have been quite frivolous with things, like
Hmm.
actually, Charles, I'll hand over to you. You can tell the story about the electric organ in our living room.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was a bit of an impulse purchase. Yeah, I think the financial
Sounds
side of
very necessary just on the surface. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead, Charles.
I think the financial impulsivity has been one of my biggest concerns, and it's like, it's something that we've sort of made progress towards now, but it was for quite a while, it was something I worried about quite a lot about what the future is going to look like for us if we don't have any like money to retire on and things like that, or we can't afford the mortgage or anything like that. But it's one example of that was the electric organ. So Kat saw on Facebook Marketplace this sort of electric organ from the 1970s, and she said, "Oh yeah, I really want that for our living room." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because it would be a really good shelf." And I said, "So would a shelf."
Okay.
Um, but we sort of debated it and went back and forth, and we decided there was just no way we could let this free. Well, this was free, it doesn't necessarily relate to the financial side of impulsivity, but just impulsivity in getting
But
things in
still,
general.
yeah.
Um, you know, we paid in other ways with the organ. It became an absolute curse to us. There's a reason if you ever see an organ being advertised online for free, there's a reason that organ's free. It's because there's no way you can get rid of an organ once you've got one. And we had this organ. It took up
Right.
so much space in our living room. This enormous electric. Neither of us can play the organ, by the way. Just to
I was going to say, did either of
make some
you
more
try
on that
and learn
point.
how
No,
to play said
no.
organ?
Yeah, and
Was it a super
neither of us
sick
had any
shelf,
interest in
though?
playing either. It was a shelf. It was a shelf, and we decided that the
Funny.
small amount of space that was on top of the organ wasn't really enough of a shelf to justify the amount of floor space this enormous thing took up. It weighed probably close to 70 kilograms. I don't know what that is in pounds off the top of my head. 140, 160 pounds, something like that. And I had to borrow my friend's van to go and pick it up. We just about got it through the back doors into the house and everything. And yeah, we could not get rid of that because you can't get rid of organs. You need another complete fool to uh to find one.
Yeah.
And find one was like, that'd be a good shelf. The only way I was able to get rid of it in the end was by advertising it as haunted, and said that it was. I couldn't get anyone to take it. I had to advertise it as haunted until somebody would be interested enough in it to buy it. That's the only way I could get rid of it.
Oh my god. That's incredible. That's I love that that was the clincher that like just sold the organ. That's so good. So, okay, first of all, if Kat, can you please send me a photo of this organ because I feel like I need to put this in the video, obviously. That is so funny. And that is such a good example. Like, yes, it was free, but like not like emotionally free. It sounds like Charles has a lot of residual trauma about said organ. Frick, that's hilarious. Yeah, I totally understand the not combining money issues. Like, I do the same thing because I want to be able to spend impulsively without having somebody else impacted by it. And I have like some, previous things, but I can't even imagine sharing money with someone else. Like, even though we like own a house and like, all that stuff, I still can't imagine sharing money. It terrifies me. Are there other impulsive things, Charles, that Kat does that is like either really fun for you or really stressful for you? Because it can go both ways.
Oh, that's a good question. It tends to be something that can be like an organ, quite burdensome and involve quite a lot of effort to sort of support and facilitate sometimes. But in other ways as well, Kat might be interested in doing a course, like or a workshop that I hadn't thought of doing before, or wouldn't think to try. Um, and I've sort of gone along as sort of emotional support, I guess, companionship, and really enjoyed it as well. We went on a sort of a barista course, like a proper like coffee brewing
Cool.
course, and like ways of like different methods of making coffee with like AeroPresses and V60 filters and things like that, and the coarseness that you grind the beans and coffee tasting and the tasting notes and all these things like that. And it's not something that I would have probably gone for before that, but it was really good. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, there's things like that. There was Kat mentioned recently that she'd really like to do a fire eating course, and that she'd really like me to do fire eating with her.
Sorry,
So
fire eating? Like where you
Yeah,
like
yeah.
shove the
fire,
sword down your
yeah,
throat and it.
yeah,
Okay, cool. Just wanted to confirm I heard you right. Okay,
yeah.
continue.
So that's something that I'm going to give a go. I think that's something I'm probably going to end up giving a go. There was the taxidermy course as well, which we haven't done yet, the taxidermy course. That's probably not something that I'll do, but I'm happy to, you know,
I'm
Watch.
sort of
obsessed.
support and I'll, I'll I'm happy to give up a corner of the garage for some, for a workstation for doing taxidermy, I
Dead
suppose.
animals.
If I see any squirrels in the road, I can put a shovel
Holy
in
sh!
the car. You know,
Oh my god,
uh,
Kat, I wish we lived near each other because I would 1000% do all this weird shit with you just for the sake of it. Oh my god. Okay, and also just like this is if you're like a vegan, maybe don't do this, but just like I don't know, Kat and well, either of you, if you follow on Facebook, there's a page called Bad Taxidermy, and it is like the
Oh,
funniest thing I've ever seen. I
yeah,
like
it
you
is.
have to look it up. It's freaking hilarious. But again, if you're a vegan, don't look it up because you won't like it. But it's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life, so highly recommend. Okay, well, I mean, I love those examples of like weird impulsive things that like you're just gonna get Charles into. And do you bring him because you kind of need that like person support there, or you because you want to drag him into your shenanigans?
It's kind of more the latter, I think. I think because Charles is so
Okay,
open-minded and nothing that I do shocks him, which is a fantastic quality to have, by
yeah,
the way. Like, I always kind of
totally.
invite him along because I know that he won't judge me. Like, he's more than happy to get involved and support me with whatever I want to do, even if it's buying a massive musical instrument that I will never learn to play and keeping it in the living room. Like, there's not many men that would do that for their partners.
Yeah.
So, I do count myself lucky, really, in having somebody who's so open-minded and non-judgmental.
Yeah, I
Truly.
say
It's incredible.
I'm pretty happy with that. If Kat says, we're doing taxi day, I'm like, all right, then let's go. Where's the scissors? Or there's an
Where's the
organ on
dead squirrel?
Facebook Marketplace. And just like, cool, all right, let's go pick up an organ. That's something to do on a Saturday.
Yeah.
It's all right. Let's go make coffee and things like that. Yeah, sounds good to me. I'm happy to do whatever.
Charles, I gather your life is never going to be boring ever again.
No, no, I wouldn't have thought so.
But I think as well, like, a lot of it is making memories, like, not so much recently, but like, not long after we got together, we went to Bosnia and Serbia. Like, Charles actually proposed to me in Bosnia. Like, they're not traditional places really that are very romantic that you would think to go to. Like, we went to Ukraine, we went and saw Chernobyl, obviously before the war.
I want to do that so bad.
It's like
Yeah, obviously.
he's just so, like, willing to do things that I want to do. So, I mean, it goes both ways as well, because luckily we do have really similar interests in that sense. But it just feels like life together is a big adventure, which is so nice.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. That's the goal. Like, I like healthy, stable adventure. And you can do it with somebody that you love and care about and that supports you. That's so great. So I have a very important question. How long was the organ in your possession?
Charles.
It was a good 6 months. I think it was a good 6 months. Yeah, I think I spent 2 months trying to sell it, and then it was sold within a month of listing it as haunted by the ghost of a 17th lounge musician. Um, a gentleman from a church came and collected it. I don't know if he got it for an exorcism or just morbid curiosity or for the church.
You know what? All good. You just let him take it. That is okay. So we're like obsessed with Halloween, and every year we have like a different themed party, and this upcoming year's theme is like haunted dollhouse. And so we've been finding all sorts of weird like haunted things on Marketplace, and like we're childless 32-year-olds, right? And we have a basement full of like creepy ass haunted dolls right now. And like I feel like it's very aligned with like this organ situation, because honestly, if we had seen haunted organ like in September of this year, we probably would buy a haunted organ just to add to the ambiance of the haunted dollhouse situation. Oh, that's so funny. Okay, so final question. I want to ask you both this question. Well, yes. Okay, I have two final questions. I want to ask you both this question. What message of hope would you share with someone with BPD who wants a loving, healthy relationship, but it doesn't think it's possible for them?
I totally think it's possible. I mean, I actually recorded an episode of the BPD Bunch a couple of months back with an ex-partner. And, like, honestly, like, I don't know whether it's because I have that more internalized presentation of BPD, so I'm not really prone to outbursts, but most of my relationships have been pretty harmonious, to be honest with you. I think it's definitely not without its difficulties, but it's 100% doable. And it's interesting because on that video we got a lot of comments and I got a lot of messages saying, like, this is staged, like that guy's an actor,
Yeah.
because like there's no way that people with BPD can have like normal relationships and stay friends with someone after, like everyone's abusive and all this kind of stuff. But he's not an actor, he is my actual ex. And it
Yeah.
is proof that, we can have those relationships. I'm not saying that it's easy, and it probably won't happen when you are, under the most intense expression of symptoms, because I would argue that if
Hmm.
you've got untreated BPD and it's literally like unmanageable, you're probably not going to be able to manage a relationship under those conditions. But it's definitely doable with healing, I think. And,
Hmm.
I think me and Charles are evidence of that. I think a lot of it is just finding your person, which is the hardest thing out of everything, I think, is finding that person. And we're just really lucky that the stars kind of aligned and we were on the same training course, because I don't think I would have found what I was looking for online. It really has to be about that
Yeah.
authentic connection with that person. And, Charles is maybe not what I would have gone for purely on the basis of the age difference. But I'm so glad that I did give
Well,
him
how
a
much is
chance.
the age difference?
I think it's 6 years, isn't it, Charles?
Yeah, I tend to forget this all the time. I like in my head, like I perceive us both as being the same age, but yeah,
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 yeah.
6 years older than me.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, I haven't mentioned this so far in the episode, but I did have a child from a previous relationship. So Charles was coming into that relationship knowing that I had a young child. So obviously the stakes are a little bit higher in that situation anyway, because whoever you bring into your life, you need to know that they're going to be sticking around for the foreseeable. Yeah, I think like it was just a case of maintaining boundaries, having communication, not ignoring things that were potential red flags. I mean, not that there were really any with Charles anyway, but if there are red flags, like paying attention to those and really kind of digging deep into whether that person is the right person for you. Because I think sometimes with BPD, the rose tinted glasses go on and, it's all rainbows and unicorns and once the scales fall from your eyes, it's a very different picture. So it's about really making sure that that person is the right person for you in the circumstances that you're in at that moment in time.
Hmm. Totally. Those rose tinted glasses will get you sometimes.
Yeah.
So do you guys parent your other kid like full time, part time?
Yeah, it's pretty shared,
Yeah,
I would say. I mean, obviously, my
Okay.
daughter lives with me full time. So Charles is kind of like essentially the other parent. Like he's quite involved
Yeah.
with my daughter because he's been there since she was really young. She's all really that he's ever known.
Okay.
yeah. It's sort of
And Charles, yeah, how about you, Charles?
yeah, yeah. So I sort of went into our relationship knowing that becoming a stepdad would be something that I'd have to sort of decide on whether I was going to step up to do, and it was something I decided that I would like to do. Um, as
Hmm.
my sort of message for hope with people with BPD and relate to relationships and things like that. There will always be people who you know see the negative connotations to a label, but on the other hand, there'll be so many people out there who um, will, you know, people with BPD have so much to offer other people in terms of, the sort of excitement that can bring to your life. And I'd say, um, not only will I, give, you know, will I find somebody who gives them the life that they want, that those people with BPD will also give somebody else the life that they want as well. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's
Beautifully said.
seeing it as not something that happens in spite of BPD, relationships and don't succeed in spite of it. They, they work in a dynamic where that sort of makes sense and that sort of fits into the dynamic of the relationship. And so that's how it works. And it's finding that person with which the dynamic works well with.
Totally. Amazing. Well, thank you both so much for sharing your story with us. It's been so inspiring, and that organ story will live with me for the rest of my life. That's so funny. Um, I just so appreciate you both, and yeah, I think like your relationship is so inspiring to just be your unique, authentic selves, and do so in like a healthy partnership is just so awesome. You can find Kat, all of Kat's links are in the notes, including her book, the BPD Bunch pod link, and social media. And is there anything else that you wanted to share in terms of where to find you, Kat?
No, I think that's covered everything. Thank you.
Of course. Well, thank you both so much.